Chris, thank you so much for being here today on the live stream with us to talk about your book, The Long Haul Leader.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. And yes, we've been friends. I was thinking about this actually. I think we must be coming up to about 12, 13 years of friendship now.
I think so. I think the first time we actually met in person was at, this is going back, Javits Center, Blog World East, many years ago. Might have been
Lord, 2011, maybe? Something like that?
Something
12,
like that.
Something like that? Yeah.
It was in the basement of the Javits Center. I remember there was a few.
We had both been naughty boys, and we've been sent down to the basement as our punishment. Yeah,
but we've had a few occasions over the years to cross paths. Of course, I had the amazing opportunity, which my wife and I still talk about to this day, to speak at the summit that you had in the Philippines, the Tropical Think Tank, and that again, my wife still talk about a trip to the Philippines. So we're going to get into a whole bunch of stuff here.
Today. Let's do it.
But we've got. So the book basically goes over 10 basically 10 steps, right? 10 strategies that can help you, basically lead for the long haul. Because I want you to share, and I think I've heard remnants of this story before, but right out of the gate, hustle is a season, not a lifestyle. And especially when people are thinking about being productive, and we hear all this advice of live for today because tomorrow isn't guaranteed. And the very thing it's trying not to do for us when we hear that kind of advice, it ends up doing. We end up, kind of going full bore, burning out. The hustle ends up being less about the speed, but we've kind of conned ourselves. The other definition of hustle is the fact that we can do it. So can we kind of dive into when you more or less have either recognized or had to remind yourself that this idea of hustle is a season and not a lifestyle?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I've hit burnout twice. Once back in 2009, 2010, which I bounced back from pretty easily. I did have a back surgery as part of it. I do want to say that. But that was kind of like the worst part of it all. Like, I was a younger man, and it was it was just easier. It was easier to bounce back from it. But then I hit burnout again in 2021 in the middle of the pandemic. And that wasn't so easy to get over. Because not only was it physical, and I had issues with blood work and cortisol levels. I was diagnosed with phase 3 adrenal fatigue, which is kind of clinical burnout. I was also treated with antidepressants for 12 months as well, which I kept to myself at the time. I was suffering with anxiety a lot and everything. And, it was kind of like looking back on it, pandemic took away from me a lot of the things that kind of made me. Right? So I couldn't travel, love traveling. Couldn't speak on stage, love the applause. Couldn't see my friends. Have got most of my really good friends are internationally. They're not based here in the UK. At the time, we had just come back and moved from the Philippines to the UK, and we were getting settled. And so, you're just about sort of getting your feet properly, squarely on the ground. And then all of a sudden the world gets turned upside down. And it really, really, really affected me. And so, went to the doctor, had a load of blood work done. And, I was basically told that, I had to slow down. My stress levels were very, very high. My diet had become pretty poor. I'd become quite sugar dependent, caffeine dependent. So I kind of went on this mission to kind of reboot things a little bit. And I kept saying, I've got to reboot. And that's where the whole Long Haul Leader Life OS or operating system comes from, because we reboot our computers. Therefore, I kind of rebuilt myself, or rebooted rather myself and the business along with it as well.
Which of the strategies was the hardest for you to kind of really get back into the rhythm with? The one that, because I mean, obviously the only way you could speak to this is if you go through something like this, and you built a lot of amazing things over the years and sustained them too. That's the other key thing too, which is of course what can lead to, if you're not careful, this kind of thing. And the interesting thing is, and I think this is really important, is this isn't the stuff that typically gets shared in public anyway, right? You never know what's going on behind the scenes. I had no idea. And I'd seen it wasn't like you were slowing down from the outside. So, but when you're doing this reboot, obviously certain synapses and systems fire better, faster, more optimally than others. Which of the ones was the one that was toughest for you to kind of go, okay, now I'm back with this one?
Yeah, I mean, like to your point, the three businesses that we owned at that particular moment in time had all been around for a while. The larger call center facility, almost 500 employees, we'd had that going. We sold that in 2023 after almost 16 years. Virtual Staff Finder was acquired at the end of last year after 14 years. Upreneur is about to hit 10 years. I mean, like I've been in it for the long haul, business wise,
Yeah.
for a while. I'm not a get rich quick guy at all. And to answer your question, I think the one thing that I found the hardest was that I needed to recalibrate my time and to rebuild my energy. Because for years I've been saying like, oh, time is our most valuable asset. Time is our most valuable asset. And I've been quoted on that years and years and years and years and years. But actually, I'm going to go back on that now, and I'm going to say actually, energy is our most valuable asset. If we don't have the energy to be able to create and show up and be of service, be of value, come to all of what we do from a business perspective, particularly from a leadership perspective, if we don't come to all of that with a certain level of purpose and servitude connected to it, then at the end of the day, like, why are we doing it? Like, there's a problem there, right? So for me, it was because I like Mike, I enjoy this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like,
That's the hard part. That's the crazy hard part. You're like, but this is the thing and why, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So it wasn't like I was struggling because I wasn't enjoying what I was doing. I was struggling because I was just doing too much of it. I was overloading. It was deadline after deadline, project after project. And it just, I didn't get into it overnight and I didn't get out of it overnight either. But I think it was probably just the ability to be able to start saying no really, really well. But more importantly than that, way more importantly than that, it was understanding that my yeses were a commodity, a very, very important one. And just getting to the point where it was like, hey, you know what? I got to upgrade my batteries here a little bit. I need to recalibrate. I need to know that I am focused on getting more of what I need to focus on done and even delegate more than I ever have done before. And, like you say, there's a whole set of principles in the book. But for me, it was more along the lines of like, well, okay, I can't say yes to everything anymore. I need to hit the pause button on a whole bunch of stuff. And I honestly, for me, it was, I needed to sort myself out personally, my health, my mindset, my mental health. I needed to nurture myself all over again properly, more than anything.
For those that are listening that have built these businesses and are running them concurrently, you letting go of two of them in rather quick succession. I mean, it's not like one
18 months or so. Yeah.
Well, that's just it. And probably some happening in tandem, right? Because of the way business dealing and all that. How tricky was it to let go of that? And why is it so important to be willing to let go, whether it's of certain projects, initiatives, even tasks? And we've talked about the 3 lists of freedom before, which you've alluded to in your other book, like tasks you love, tasks you hate, and the tasks you like, which are the trickier ones, right? How does a long haul leader, and how did you, and maybe this can be answered in the same vein, prepare for this constant ebb and flow of letting go, holding on, that sort of thing, especially when, you're dealing with some of the stuff that you're dealing with?
Well, I think the easiest decision that we made in regards to that was actually letting go and exiting from the larger company, because believe it or not, it survived the pandemic brilliantly. I was quite surprised that it did, if I'm very, very honest with you. All of our clients were international. We had, large facilities with big overheads and all that good stuff attached to it. And I just didn't see it happening. Like, we were 3-4 months into the pandemic and I was like, it's going to be a bloody miracle if we get through this. But we did, profitably as well. And so I think really the period of pandemic, that kind of, 18 months, 2 years or so that we were kind of having to deal with things, particularly as we were based here as well. We didn't anticipate the fact that we weren't going to be able to go back every 6 months. That was the plan, that we were going to go back every 6 months and touch base with the team and all the rest of it. But we couldn't do that, obviously. And it just got to the point where it was like, you know what, enough's enough. We've been doing it a long time. We've made some good money. everyone's going to get what they're owed, and we did it the right way, and that was kind of the end of it. Virtual Staff Finder was a little harder
Mhm.
because it was really kind of like the last business connection that we had to the Philippines specifically. Smaller team, only 12, 14 or so people on that team at the time. But I had also kind of come to the real conclusion that I only really wanted to run one business moving forward. And so I selected Youpreneur for that business. It's where I kind of feel the most connected to. I love coaching people when it comes to helping them monetize their expertise and build a personal brand. So we decided that we were going to potentially sell Virtual Staff Finder. And then an old acquaintance of mine had been building a business in the Philippines in a similar vein for a few years and been doing very, very well with it. We had a conversation, and at first I was just like, "Give me a load of money." You know, just,
Speak right to my heart. Give
yeah,
me just a ton of
right,
cash.
yeah, your money or your life, No, it was kind of just, I want out, give me a load of money, make me an offer kind of thing. And they did. They made me an offer, and it was a good offer. But then I really started to look at what they were doing and how they were doing it and the people that they were serving and the mission that they had locally to get to like 10,000 jobs and all this kind of stuff. And I was like, you know what? I don't need the money. I like it, but I don't need it. Actually, instead, I'd like to stay involved. So I took equity in the business, and now I'm basically an advisor and an evangelist for them. And it was great. I have very little, if anything, actually, to do with the day-to-day running of the business. I can focus on Youpreneur and focus on my own mastermind, my inner circle. And that's all I really do now. And it's great. So, I've offloaded a lot. There was obviously a lot of internal discussions that I had to have with myself in regards to that. And I kind of went through a little bit of a bit of a crisis, like an like an internal crisis. Like, well, I'm a serial entrepreneur. I'm known as Chris Ducker, a serial entrepreneur, best-selling author. And now I'm not a serial entrepreneur anymore. Now I've only got one company. I don't have three, and all this kind of stuff. And I was like, well, it doesn't really matter. Titles are kind of useless anyway. So, it was a weird time, but I'm glad that we went through everything we went through in order to be able to create base to be able to now start to really live the way that I want to live as a leader.
One as we're going through kind of these, looking at all the principles and such that you bring up in the book, and the interesting thing is as I was going through the book, you don't need to read these sequentially. Like that's and
No.
and I think that's very evident by not just the conversation we're having, but when you go through the book, okay, I need to work on the idea of staying in your zone of genius. The idea of not forgetting to do what you love, all of those things. But one of the things that comes up is this idea of patience, because in order to be a long haul leader, that's the underpinning throughout. It's like patience is required. How tricky was that for you, and what are some of the pieces of advice you can give those? Because again, going back to the hustle idea, which is right in the introduction, you and I have had the pleasure of seeing Gary speak. I think you've met Gary Vaynerchuk on a couple of occasions.
Oh yeah, we've hung out on multiple occasions. Yeah,
Gary's initial message for the longest time was hustle, hustle, hustle. And then 1 year I was at a conference, and everyone's like, and he goes, but you got it. Patience was the thing. It wasn't like he shifted his message wholesale. But he's like, okay, I got your attention now. Okay, now really, here's the secret sauce. You've got to be patient at the same time. So what are some of the things that you obviously have gone through to recognize that patience is, and maybe what principles people need to watch out for that could short circuit their patience?
Yeah, I think, patience is kind of like an overarching label I've given it, really. I think what it comes down to, that there are a few things I think that really kind of like stand out to me. First and foremost, long haul leaders are definitely going to be open-minded individuals. They maintain a really good open-minded approach to things. They embrace new ideas. They work on new projects. They appreciate the fact that new perspectives will come into their lives, their eras, their parts of their journey, and they stay open-minded, plain and simple. They're also grounded individuals as well. And when I say that, I don't mean that you're walking around on the grass first thing in the morning, although you should do that. It's great. I started doing that about 2 years ago, and it's amazing. But what I mean is that they remain grounded in their values and their principles, even in the process of navigating change and uncertainty to a certain degree, right?
Mhm.
Um, and then also long haul leaders are, they're adaptable. We have to adapt. Change is going to come our way. I remember my dad telling me years ago, he said, there's only three things in life you can really rely on. Number one is death. Number two is taxes. And number three is change. So, you might get caught off guard with one or two of those, but they're coming for you one way or another. And so being adaptable to certain circumstances and embracing change for me now at this point in my journey, I realize that's an opportunity for growth and for innovation. And I get excited about that.
Mhm.
So when we talk about patience, what we're really talking about here is understanding that it's not all going to come our way all at the same time. It's also about making sure that we provide ourselves the springboards that we need as and when we need them. And that's why I say hustle is a season, not a lifestyle. Hustle is not in and amongst itself, it's not a bad thing. We do
No.
have to put a foot down on the gas quite regularly as business owners, very particularly, right? Even just career minded individuals that want to build a great career. You got to hustle up a little bit every now and then, but it is not sustainable. You don't sprint a marathon, right? You don't
Right.
sprint a marathon. And so it's important that to understand that, with patience, I truly believe that you create more opportunities for yourself when you're patient. And part of being a long haul leader is making sure that you genuinely stay in your zone of genius, like really stay in your zone of genius, and you focus on the right priorities and you kind of let go of the rest at the time. And that's really what it's all about at the very core of the message.
As we're going through this on a live broadcast right now, I've got some of the members of Time Crafting Trust Premium in here. This is not so much a question as a comment. It may be a new term. He says serial means one after the other. So you are now a serial entrepreneur, but you were a parallel entrepreneur before.
I love that, Tim. I love that. I think that's great. And, that's a really, really good way of looking at it, actually. So, yeah, I'm going to call myself a serial entrepreneur now at this
No,
point.
now you're a serial
I'm going to go
entrepreneur.
back to doing it again.
The true meaning of the term. One of the
Yeah.
things that and you mentioned this right off the top of not being able to travel when you just were in that state, and the idea of, I live on an island. You technically, I guess, live on an island, right? Wouldn't that technically you're on an island?
I mean, we all technically live on
all right,
islands.
fair point. But there's something you mentioned in the book, which kind of resonated with me. The pandemic definitely had issues with this, and now, I mean, there's things going on as we're recording this that are keeping me in Canada a little bit closer to home, a little bit less desire to go across that border, that sort of thing. But it does lead to a bit of the difference between being alone and working in solitude and being lonely. And you actually mentioned, loneliness deprives us of hope. So why do you think loneliness can hit leaders especially hard, maybe especially for those of us that are more geographically kind of isolated? And what's the first step that you took and that others can take? Maybe they're the same or different to control that.
I think very specifically down to leaders. Like leaders are called leaders because they lead other people, right? They lead individuals, they lead groups, they lead communities, and therefore they're used to being around people on a regular basis, whether it be in person or online or any other fashion. Maybe it's a combo of the both, whatever it is. When that's taken away from you the way it was during the pandemic, you're going to react to that in different ways. Like, so for example, I've always enjoyed speaking and coaching people, very specifically coaching people in person. Like, I want to be there in the room with you. That's when I know I can be most effective for you. In April 2020, we needed to completely switch that up. And we had just launched in November prior, we had just launched the Upreneur Incubator, which was one of our group coaching programs. And the whole premise of that program was to be in person with each other for an entire day and evening every single quarter. So in January 2020, we met up in London. We did our first thing, and it was almost 100 people in the room. It was amazing. All these guys paid like £2,000 or something to be in the room. It was amazing. It was like, I'm doing the best thing ever now. Like, this is exactly what I wanted to be doing, moving back to the UK. And then 4 months later, we're forced into a situation where we can't do it in person anymore. Our second quarterly meetup is now going to have to shift to online. And I do not like doing things online at that point. Like, I don't want to be looking through a webcam trying to convince somebody to, sell their book or, get on stage more regularly. And so I did feel really lonely. Like, I'd be lying if I said I didn't. And I think also that the big thing is that we got used to being able to be in a lot of different places and be quote unquote everywhere, right? Like, we kind of got used to that.
Mm-hmm.
But leadership isn't really being about everywhere anymore. It's about being exactly where it matters for that particular moment in time. Like, I'm really, really comfortable knowing that. So you don't need to be on, say, every single social platform out there. By the way, you don't need more followers. You need more focus. That's maybe another conversation for another time. But you don't need to be on every platform, in every room, every dinner, every conference. You choose your presence now. You should choose your presence with intention, not insecurity, not with loneliness attached to it. And that's been a major breakthrough for me personally.
Well, I think the other thing you bring up, which you brought up energy before, in terms of being, the thing that is more valuable than time, but also you just noted, and this is again why energy is such a powerful driver of what we do and what we don't do. You also said that the energy that wasn't there for these kind of virtual calls when they were happening all the time, there's nothing to fill the cup. So it's energy is, and the interesting thing about this is that energy, unlike time, which can be very objective, we met at this very specific time to have this conversation, et cetera. But how we use time is very subjective, right? And our relationship with time is subjective. You bring up in chapter 4 the idea of mastering every moment. What I loved about that before I even opened that chapter was you said moment and not minute. Moments are qualitative, minutes are quantitative. So my question for you is, I'm a believer in the idea of trying to shift more towards a balance between quality and quantity. And I think we've veered too far in the productivity world in the quantity direction.
Sure.
As I saw that, I'm like, okay, we see the long haul leader has a means to, and you just brought it up, to be where they matter most, which will then undoubtedly, if done properly, enhance the quality of the efforts of the organization, what have you, of whatever you're looking for out of that moment. Have you noticed that since you've gone through this process and even the writing of this book, that there seems to be maybe more of a balance between the quality of your efforts and the quantity of your efforts? Did you ever notice that there is a disparity there?
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And it's quite interesting because, like, the one really big change I needed to make was in me, right? Like, I needed to get myself sorted. The business was fine. In fact, actually 2021, we had a killer year. We averaged like 100K a month that year.
And you're not going anywhere. And you're not going anywhere. So the bottom line, you're not spending any money on travel.
Well, yeah, exactly. We had a great year. So again, it wasn't like it was stress because work wasn't going well. It was going great. It was all me. It was in my head, a lot of it. It was in my soul, in my heart, a lot of it as well. I just wasn't really enjoying what I was working on. Actually, I was enjoying the work. I just wasn't enjoying the way that we were doing the work virtually. That wasn't me at all. And one thing that I really need, like, obviously, I had a whole bunch of blood work done and all this kind of stuff, right? And I hired a functional medicine doctor to help me figure out what was going on internally with my body. And I don't, you know me well, Mike. Like, I don't do rah rah. Like, that's not my bag at all. But like, I figured that maybe because everything else looked so good from the outside looking in, like, and you said yourself, you didn't know any of this stuff was going on. Nobody knew anything was going on. Not even my best friends knew. Like, my wife knew, that was about it.
Mhm.
And so, what I realized was that I needed to, in order for the business, I guess, to like be as sustainable as I wanted it to be, particularly at that time, I realized that I needed to be sustainable, right? Like it all started with me being sustainable. So I needed to make changes in the way that I was doing certain things: health, diet, exercise, hobbies, or the lack thereof of
Yeah.
hobbies. That was a big one. And just just accepting the fact that actually working on me, focusing on me for once wasn't selfish. It was actually really strategic in the grand scheme of it all.
Mhm.
And once I realized that and I accepted that, holy moly, I went all in on it. Started cold plunging and red light therapy and saunas and all these other kind of things that I never would have done. I mean, me getting a tub of freezing cold water? No, thank you. Now I do it 3 times a week because it's a massive dopamine hit. I love it. It's my drug of choice now, quite
Mm.
literally, right? Not that I was on drugs before, but I'm just I'm just saying, like,
Water over
it wasn't.
whiskey. Water over whiskey. There you
Yeah,
go.
yeah, exactly. Oh, and actually, I mean, I was a big single malt and bourbon
Mhm.
fan. I've got a really good sized collection still, um, but I can probably count on one hand how many double bourbons I've poured myself in 2025. Right,
Yeah.
so I've moved right back on all that stuff, and like I said, self care is not selfish; it's strategic. Once I realized that, it was open season on everything.
I think the other thing that you bring up, and Tim actually brings this up, and I'll throw that in the chat here. It's all about balance and pace. Really, you bring that up. The pacing is such a key
Yep.
element of this because, again, that hustle versus just sustaining. There's a balance there. One of the things that you bring up was the idea of hobbies. You brought that up before,
Mm.
and I wonder if, because we chatted about this, we caught up during, I think it was at least a couple of years ago. We were chatting about bonsai.
Yeah,
And are you still doing like that? Because to me,
100%.
so there's this term, and I think I mentioned it to you when I'm in a book club locally, and a doctor said I'm doing what I call bonsai retirement, which means he's not fully retirement. He's just pruning away. And I think, do you find that, I mean, you obviously talk about, those things you love, including the personal stuff. How has leaning back in to things like, again, whether it's playing a musical instrument, like I've got my guitars behind me because my son's back into it, so I'm playing again,
Right.
bonsai, any of those things. How has that helped you in terms of being a long haul leader outside, like professionally? Because there's got to be some cause and effect there.
Yeah, massively, 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 massively important. The uh, the balance that it has brought me, and to your live viewer here, Tim's point, the balance that it has brought me has just been ridiculous. Like it's been ridiculous. And I have found, yes, I'm still, I've been doing bonsai 6 years now. I've got probably about 40 trees on the property now of varying ages, sizes, species. I've also started sketching and watercolor again. I used to paint a lot in my teens. I don't think I picked up a paintbrush for 20 odd years. So I started painting a lot. And the one thing really, the one really important thing that I do now, and I do it almost daily, is I make time to get out into nature. It was actually my functional doctor actually said to me, like, you need to get out into nature. No phone, no podcasts, no walking and talk meetings or anything like that. Like, just be out in nature, listen to the birds, get some sun on your head, all that kind of stuff. And so I was like, okay, fine, I'll do it. And I realized after like the fourth or fifth time that I went out that I really loved, like really, really loved spotting all these different birds. And so I started making notes of them in a little, kind of like a little field note planner thing. Um, and then my wife, said to me one day, "Why don't you bring that spare camera with you this time around? Kind of like try and snap some photos." So it's gone. It's gone from me walking around with like a little pocket camera to me now walking around with a 600 mil lens, somewhat in camo, And just today I spent 2 hours this morning out, and I took probably, I don't know, 7 or 8 dozen photos, and I had 2 or 3 incredible encounters, one with a kingfisher and one with a little coal tit in the woodlands, and one by the river. And it was just amazing. It was amazing to do that, right? And so when I started writing the book, and I said, I got to include hobbies. I need to include hobbies in the book because it's been such a game changer for me. I started doing research on kind of like, I think I typed something into Google, like, famous people who have cool hobbies or something to that effect. And I found out that the CEO of Goldman Sachs is a gentleman by the name of David Solomon. And David Solomon also goes by DJ D-Sol. And he's one of the most requested dance DJs in the festival scene in the United States. I was just blown away by this.
Wow.
And then I was like, okay, so what does this mean for how it affects our work? Like, what does it mean for how it actually affects our work itself? So I looked into things. First up, when you're engaging in a pastime and a hobby, you're not working. So you can kind of class that as recovery to a certain degree. And we looked at this, and it was actually a Harvard business survey that was done. And it stated that business owners, very specifically, that prioritize their own recovery outside of work time outperform competitors by as much as 20%.
Wow.
That's pretty telling, right?
Yeah.
That's pretty telling. Now, you couple that together with the fact that creative hobbies like painting, DJing, cutting little trees to bits, that kind of stuff, creative hobbies very specifically boosted overall performance in entrepreneurs, CEOs, C-suite executives by as much as 30% if they engage in those hobbies for a minimum of 2 hours a week. So, I mean, these statistics, I mean, we're grown men. We're giggling here over this because it's like, okay, so what you're telling me is that I can go out and buy all the Lego sets that I want to make. Is that what you're telling me? Right? Is this like the permission slip?
I literally have the typewriter Lego set, the 3-in-1.
There you go.
Oh
my God. I have no room in my office anymore for my Lego. But like what you're saying is that if you engage in hobbies away from work a couple of hours a week that are also creative type hobbies, painting, drawing, making music, whatever it might be, you will not only outperform your competitors, but you'll also get to the point of being almost 30% better in terms of productivity in the work that you do as well. Huge. Sign me up.
You do realize that by admitting your birding hobby that you have officially joined the, like, once we're 50 plus, I think, area. That's where guys start to, like, it's like they become. And Tim, again, who is, by the way, Tim is he's a member of our community. He's a fellow Brit. He writes, he does all this. He actually paints. And he said, he's now, I didn't know well, I think I did know he watched birds, but he is, it's transformed my bird watching activity on walks, but it can annoy the hell out of my wife when I keep stopping to check the app to see what.
I do this. So there are a couple of apps which are great for all you wannabe birders out there. One of them's called Merlin, which is an odd name for a birding app. But basically, you turn on your microphone and it tells you what birds it can hear, which is amazing. And the other one is called Birder, so bird with an A at the front, at the end rather, and that allows you to kind of like go on walks and track all of the birds you see and all this kind of stuff. But it's also got a social element to it, so you can connect with other people in your area and all that sort of stuff as well. But yeah, I mean, whether it's bird watching or making Lego sets or DJing or spending time in the garden, like whatever it is. it is proven, like it's backed up by data, and the numbers never lie. Um, if you take time away from work to recover and enjoy things other than just work, 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 you will become better at your work. So, like I said, sign me up all day long.
Chris, I want to be respectful of time. So before we wrap up, I just want to ask you, if someone was going to start somewhere in the book, because we've established that, obviously read the introduction, but then, it does not need to be read sequentially. Where do you think
Mm.
is the best place, or perhaps maybe the springboard that people might need to go towards, to lean into long haul leadership? So maybe that springboard that will keep the momentum going for them.
Yeah, yeah. So, to your point, every chapter is bingeable. I wanted to write this book in a way that when you picked it up in a store or you looked at the chapter listing on Amazon, that you do the flick, right? You do the book flip, the content flick. And I was like, well, I want someone to say, "Oh man, that's a problem for me right now, and if this can help me, I'll spend the $30, whatever," kind of thing, right? So, yes, it's exactly like that. If I had to send everyone to one particular chapter, like do not skip reading this chapter, do not skip it. It would probably be chapter 5, which is all about upgrading your batteries and learning how to protect your energy properly. Because like I said, without your energy as a leader, you're not much use to anybody.
The book is called The Long Haul Leader: 10 Strategies to Work Smarter, Live Better, and Achieve Lasting Success. Gloria Jean, who's a member of our community, has also said, this would be a good book club book for late autumn prep for 2026. Hello, by the way.
I love that idea,
Yeah,
Gloria.
I think it's a great idea. We have a monthly book club in Time Crafting Trust Premium. And so we are recording this. If you're watching this live, obviously, we're doing this well before the book comes out. We can get some pre-orders going. We're going to get Chris to share that in a minute. But late autumn, that's just after as the book is coming out of its initial launch phase. But you and I both know, Chris, that long tail stuff you've written several books before this, so that each book will build upon one another. How does this book build upon your body of work so far? Because you've got Virtual Freedom, then you've got Rise of the Youpreneur, and now The Long Haul Leader. It's, looking at your body of work, how does that kind of shake out when you look back at that?
Yeah, I mean, I really do feel like it works. It works in pretty well, and all three of the books they've genuinely been written based on nothing but sheer experience, plain simple. It's not like I'm going after a trend here, right? So what Virtual Freedom did is it taught you the importance of automating and, more importantly, delegating things as a business owner and not having to wear all the hats. Rise of the Youpreneur doubled down on the principle of personal branding and building a reputation as a true leader and an expert in your industry. And the long haul leader obviously is focused on making sure that you're around long enough to reap the benefits of all that stuff, as well as obviously serve the people you feel called to serve for as long as possible as well. And if anybody is interested in pre-ordering the book, they can just head over to longhaulleader.com. And if they do that before September 2, which is the official publishing date, all you've got to do is just send a copy of the receipt via a little form on the website. And you got $600 worth of bonuses that we're going to send you directly and immediately as well. So it's longhaulleader.com. All you got to do is just buy one copy of the support. But hey, if you want to buy 2 or 3, I'm not going to stop you doing that. And you'll be making some of your friends happy as well. But yeah, get some bonuses, read a great book, change your life a little bit. And hopefully we get the opportunity to meet, have a cup of tea and talk all about it at some point.
Chris, thanks so much for joining us for a productive conversation today.
Appreciate you, brother. Take good care.